team. And for those who I haven't met, my name is Marissa Spady, and I'm your Senior Manager for the No Kid Hungry South Carolina campaign. And I'm excited to be here to share with you a little bit about our grant opportunity for South Carolina summer meal sponsors. And excited to see you all here today and share a little bit more about this opportunity and all the great work that you're doing. If you would like, you're welcome to put your name and your organization into the chat so we can see who's joining us today and where you're coming from, as we are all in this good fight together to help end childhood hunger in the summer months. So let's go ahead and get started. It looks like we're at a good number to get going. All righty. So for those of you who are not familiar with No Kid Hungry, we are a nonprofit under the organization Share Strength, and we have No Kid Hungry campaigns located in various states across the country. And our goal really is to help end childhood hunger, not only here in South Carolina, but across the entire United States. We believe that in a country as successful and wealthy and in places where we should not have children going hungry. And so our focus really is to end childhood hunger through expanding access to the federal child nutrition program. So that being school meals, summer meals, after school meals, SNAP, WIC, and those programs that can really help our children get the nutrition they need to be successful. With that being said, as a nonprofit organization, our goal is to help support you all who are the hands and feet of serving children day in and day out to make sure that they are receiving the nutrition they need on a regular basis. And so ways in which we do that is one, through granting, which you all will hear more about here in just a few moments, but we'll tell you a little bit about how the process will work and what it will look like for you all to apply. But our goal is to help support you in reaching and feeding as many kids as possible in the summer months coming up. We also work with various organizations across the country to do research to better understand ways to help reach and serve children in underserved communities, because we know that they may be at higher risk for not having those nutrients they need to be successful in and out of the classroom. With that being said, we want to make sure that we are raising awareness of these programs, not only to the families and children, but also to folks across the state and across the nation about the importance of these programs and why our children really need to be having access to them. We also provide training, and I will share some upcoming training opportunities for you all in just a few moments. But we will have a series coming up of webinars specifically on summer meals and rural non-congregate. So we work with schools and community partners across the country to learn best practices to then in turn share back with each of you so that we really don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's where we do our best work, is when we all work together to reach and feed more children in our very own communities. And last but not least, we have a team of government relations and advocates up in DC that are working hard to understand what's happening on the ground. So when I and my colleagues get to talk to you all who are in the local communities feeding children, the most important thing is that we are able to share that up with our advocacy teams and government relation teams so that our policymakers can understand what's actually happening on the ground and how that impacts your work in feeding kids. So that's a little bit about us at No Kid Hungry and how we're here to help support you all reach and feed as many kids as possible. Next slide, please. So before we move on any further, I did just want to start with the why. I think this is really the most important reason. Why are we all here? What are we doing, and what do we want to reach? And I think it comes down to truly understanding the numbers. 1 in 6 South Carolina children may experience hunger and food insecurity on any given day. However, we know that summer is also often the hungriest time of year for many of our students. Children, we know, all deserve a safe, healthy, and delicious food to help them reach and grow into healthy adults. And the summer meal program is definitely a program that we feel strongly about, the support of making sure those children have access to those meals. And ultimately, we believe that our South Carolina summer meal sponsors are truly the backbone of helping reach and reduce a No Kid Hungry South Carolina and reducing childhood food insecurity during those summer months. And that's really why we're here today, to talk about ways to help support you in serving and reaching more children. With that being said, 3 things that really matter today. Number 1, children in South Carolina depended on you this past summer, and guess what? you all were there for them. So number one, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts and from the bottom of the hearts of the children that you fed. Thank you so much for all the hard work. We know that this is not an easy program. It is fast and furious, but the work that you do truly does have an impact on the families in your communities. Number two, unfortunately, there's still more work to be done before we can truly achieve a No Kid Hungry in South Carolina. With that being said, planning is starting right now. If you haven't already started, planning for summer 2025 is well on its way, and we're here to help support you. And this is a few ways in which we hope to do that. Through partnerships, our team of experts, we have a network of consultants that we provide program assistance to and support through, whether it be by phone or by email, by webinar, or I hope to come and visit some of you all in person this summer. But ultimately, our goal is to help navigate and clarify any of the USDA guidance alongside of your state agency, provide guidance related to federal meal programs, specifically this summer as SFSP and SSO, to help to strategize plans for meal service, whether it be your distribution model or your menu planning. So thinking through what is going to be the most efficient way for your individual sponsorship to be able to serve kids in your community. So that comes down to, are we doing grab and go? Are we doing mobile meals? Are we having a variety of all the different meal services? Thinking through staffing, communication, and partnerships in your local communities. We also want to relay those best practices and lessons learned from organisms and districts all around the United States, and specifically here in South Carolina, because some of your partners and your neighbors are doing some amazing things. We also will help you troubleshoot some challenges as well as identify some solutions that we've seen in other places that have worked well. And then one of the things that I think that we have really prided ourselves on is how do we help peer-to-peer support? We know that sometimes when you're in the midst of serving meals on a day-to-day basis, it gets very siloed and you can't really think about what's happening around you. I think we feel like we're on our own little island sometimes serving summer meals, and really you do have a whole wealth of community that are around you that can come around you to help support and give guidance and great ideas to help you do a great job of serving children. So we're here to help you, and we hope that you will come alongside of us and let us offer that support. All right, and with that being said, I am going to hand it over to one of my teammates, Hannah Benson, as she's going to dig into more of the details on our granting priorities and our next steps.
Thanks, Martha. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm a grants manager here at No Kid Hungry, and I actually live right up the road from most of you in Charlotte. I used to live in South Carolina as well for almost a decade. So always excited to be back on calls with South Carolinians. So I'll talk a little bit about our granting priorities. Here I have listed our really high-level overview of granting priorities. We always try to prioritize grants to communities that are disproportionately impacted as under-resourced communities. A few of those examples are listed here. So communities where 50% or more of the population identifies as Black, Latino, Indigenous peoples, Asian, Hawaiian Native, or Pacific Islander. Communities where school districts and organizations face unique challenges in addressing hunger. In particular, for summer, we're looking at rural communities. Communities where we're seeing extreme economic hardship, and then communities where members are experiencing intersecting social and environmental inequities. There's a couple of web pages linked here too that you can go to learn a lot more about our priorities. I think we can go to the next slide. So for summer specifically, as we are now entering our granting for summer 2025, our granting is specifically supporting the expansion of non-congregate summer feeding models. So for sponsors that are operating the summer food service program or the seamless summer option, our grant making is prioritized towards only non-congregate summer feeding, and we're really looking at how do we expand those models across the state and rural communities. We're looking at, this kind of goes back to the last slide, but really specific communities in some of our high priority communities, which are those facing high and persistent poverty, and then Also looking at communities with immigrant migrant populations, Indigenous tribal populations, Latino and Black communities as well. Next slide. So some of the strategies that we are really specifically looking to fund. The first one is looking at new sponsors who have previously not served non-congregate meals. So we want to be there to support the new sponsors who are working in communities that don't have access to these programs already. We are also interested in supporting sponsors that are already providing non-congregate meals, but are looking at expanding their program this summer. So that could look like adding new meal sites or looking at their existing sites and figuring out how to increase accessibility. So keeping sites open additional hours or increasing the number of meals being served. Maybe shifting the hours to better meet community needs or improving site locations to meet community needs. We're also looking at what models are you leveraging? We've seen some demonstration that models like home delivery and mobile route distribution have been really effective at meeting the kids where they are. And so, that's not the only priority, but, if you're using those models, that's definitely going to be prioritized. We're also looking at how sponsors are maximizing their program operations to best meet the needs of kids and to serve the maximum allowable number of meals per week. So in an ideal world, we'd love to be supporting sponsors that are serving 14 meals a week to kids. That's not always possible, and there are barriers to getting there, and sometimes you have to work your way up there. But these are some of the ideals that we've set out to fund. Obviously, there's a lot more within this, but these are some examples. Next slide. So some of the things, we are overall pretty flexible in what we do fund, as long as it's meeting the strategy priorities that we've already outlined. There are a few things that we cannot fund. So for example, programs that are seeking to completely maintain the programs that they started last year or before, and are not planning to expand beyond what they were originally doing. We do have limited funds, so that's the reason we do need to prioritize the expansion of non-congregate this year. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking, not working from home. So we cannot support the maintenance of program. We're looking at really how are you expanding your non-congregate meals program. The next is that we cannot support congregate summer meals programs. Again, we have limited funds and we need to be really strategic about where those are going. So that's why we've really focused our summer granting on non-congregate meal programs. The next is anything related to student meal debt. We cannot support any supplies or equipment needed to support food programs that are not associated with federal child nutrition programs, such as school gardens or farms, school pantries, and backpack programs. We cannot fund those. And then lastly, anything related to school building or capital investments. So thinking cafeteria redesign, things like that. Next slide. All right, so we have kind of a two-step application process for this summer grant cycle. Our inquiry form is available for you to fill out through April 21st. And a link will be shared after this if you haven't already received it. That is kind of a first step in our application process. It helps us really make sure that before you submit a full application, what you're looking for funding does align with what we are looking to fund. We don't want to waste anyone's time on an application. So that's why we have a two-step process. It's a short inquiry form. Once we review that, typically pretty quick, if we are interested in inviting you to fill out a full application, our team will reach out. And that application, I believe, is due in early May. Our grant amounts vary. We know that different programs serve wide ranges of number of kids and have different program operations. So our grant amounts, we really ask you to look at what your operations are, what do you need in order to operate and expand your non-congregate meal program. So that's why we don't have a set amount. And our team will reach out if you fill out that inquiry and we're interested in having you apply. Next slide. All right, I always like to share a few granting mythbusters just because sometimes when you're a first-time applicant, or maybe you're not even a first-time applicant, it's nice to hear what we are and are not looking for. So you're never penalized for asking questions. We want this application process to be as open-ended as possible. We want to be in communication with you to hear what your questions are, to hear about what you're thinking for your program and hear like the larger context around what you're applying for. More details are always better than fewer details. So I know some funders really prioritize, like, we want you to be straight to the point. We love to get as much detail as possible to really understand the program that you will be implementing this summer. But we also know that it takes time to fill out an application, and if it's better to have a conversation to talk through some of those details, please put as much as you can in the application, but we are also always open to having a conversation. We also know that when you submit, say you were to submit an application in 2 weeks, you might not know your full plans for the summer. We know that that evolves. So it's okay to be kind of figuring out what you're doing as you're writing the application. Again, that goes back to, like, this is kind of a partnership for us. We want to have a relationship with you and learn about your program. Be honest. Please don't tell us what you think we want to hear. We want to hear about your program. We don't want to fund things that are just on our priority list. We want these to be priorities for you too. So, and then the last is, if you have any barriers to completing an application online, please contact us and we are here to help. We have had applicants fill out their applications over the phone through a conversation, or go through like alternative means to complete the application. So we don't want that to be a barrier. We're here to work with you and help you as much as possible. Next slide. All right, I won't dive too deep into this slide. This is just an overview of everything in our application. We do have a separate application for schools and school districts and community organizations. They ask for very similar things. So an overview of your summer program and how you're anticipating that looking like, number of sites, how you're planning to serve kids, what your model will look like, etc. We also ask for contact information, sometimes demographic information. If you are a school district, we'll ask for some historic school meals participation program information. That just depends on the program you're applying for. So for summer, we're really just asking for historic summer information. Budget information, and any strategies you're using to elevate and address the needs of people of color in your community specifically as well. So, next slide. I think I'm turning it back to Marissa.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for all the details. And we'll also allow for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll get to them shortly. Or just so you don't forget, I have a tendency to forget what I was going to say. So if there's something that's burning, just feel free to put it in the chat and we'll come back to it. And or we can do a Q&A at the end. So happy to do that. Did want to share a few resources because we know that it can be challenging to plan. Especially if you are looking to expand and grow your program, and if it's not just going to be what you've always done, thinking about strategically looking at where meals have historically been served. And this is our new tool, that our No Kid Hungry priority map that has just come out. So wanted to make sure that was able to share this with you all, and you can, put this include it in our follow-up email, as well as a new resource for you all to be able to play with, look at where sites were last year and kind of think about what's rural, what's not rural, what's high need area, and go from there. So happy to have this new resource. And as Hannah was mentioning, we really do want to focus on the rural non-congregate. And with that being said, you're probably wondering, is my area rural? Well, if you looked at this map 2 years ago, when it came out for summer 2023, it was a much different map than it was last year. And I've talked to several sponsors who thought last year they couldn't do non-congregate because they didn't realize the map had changed. It's much more inclusive to rural than it was the previous summer. With that being said, we're thankful for USDA to having made those adjustments in identifying rural areas. Everything in green on the map there is going to be considered rural. Now, it still has to be area eligible. So with that being said, you want to make sure that one, is it area eligible based on that 50% or higher free or reduced, or based on census tract data, but then also thinking through whether or not it is considered rural. And I do believe that just about every single county in the state of South Carolina has some areas of rural going on. So with that being said, if you are in one of the larger cities, such as Greenville, close to Charlotte, Augusta, Columbia, and Charleston, and even some in Myrtle Beach and Florence. So thinking through that, there may be pockets, and there are plenty of tools that will let you know which schools or which addresses pop up as rural, whereas others may not be. So this is a great tool to be able to do that, and we'll be able to follow up with that information in a little more detail. If you have any questions. Never did we ever think that geography and mapping would be such a large part of our jobs, did we? I mean, I surely didn't, but I have come to learn to like it. All right, next step. Okay, so just wanted to give a quick heads up shout out to our friends who did receive grants last year in South Carolina. We gave out a little over $250,000 to 13 different organizations across the state, and we're excited to hear some of the great ideas that they had and ways in which they were able to meet the needs in their specific community. So, just wanted to share that that's where we were last year. And I know Hannah did mention, we do have, limited funds. So just being mindful of those organizations and communities that are at the top of the priority list of things that we want to help and reach. Next slide. Here are a couple of pictures that I've taken across both of my states in both Tennessee and South Carolina. If I didn't mention it, I am located in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, sometimes a little bit easier for me to get to some of my neighboring communities who've gotten them. But I think the same idea is in place and same ideas of things that were utilized for funding. At transportation, we know when we are working through supporting our neighbors that are in rural communities, transportation is often a huge barrier, but it can also be a barrier for some of our sponsors who don't have access to those vehicles to get meals to those communities where folks are living. And so I know that some of our YMCAs have retrofitted some of their vans to be able to carry refrigeration, and or other organizations have rented refrigerated trucks to be able to carry those 7-day meal boxes or whatever, however many meals that they are transporting. So here's just a couple examples of what that might look like. Next slide. Marketing materials. This is something that one of our Ys utilized as I was driving through a very rural part of the state. Saw a billboard, almost got in an accident, but was able to grab a quick picture. And this was one of the examples of how they were able to get the word out about their meal programs and the various locations. And then we know that yard signs can help people figure out exactly where you're doing your distributions at. So something that can point people in the right direction, let them understand who's providing their meals and where they're going to be able to pick those up on a regular basis in the community. Next slide. And then some additional things were coolers. We know that it gets hot in some of our southern states down here, and we want to make sure that any food that is being provided to families is kept at proper temperature. So coolers, insulated bags, ice packs, things of that nature that will make life a little bit easier in ensuring that food is kept at proper temperature. In some places, they were doing a registration for their students and families to be able to pick up the meal. So they requested funds for iPads to be able to keep that track of that and make sure that you're monitoring the number of meals being sent out. And then rolling carts was another one, as well as meal service supplies, such as the boxes or t-shirt bags that were helpful to make sure that they were able to give out as many meals as possible, and make it easy for families and children to carry those meals all together, bundled up together. So here's just a few examples of what those might look like. All right. So in talking with the state agency and understanding, they really want to see an increase in participation in meals. And I think across all of their meal programs, not just summer, but, school breakfast and lunch, a 20% increase in meal participation. And so as I was thinking through some ideas, and I know Hannah was able to provide you with some just overall ideas of what that could look like. But if we're looking into the nitty gritty of what does the day-to-day service and how do we get to increase in our meal service by 20%? Um, what does that look like? So, as Hannah mentioned, if you have never served rural non-congregate meal service in your summer meal program, just starting that for the first time and figuring out what that looks like, and ways to reach those. We know that in a lot of cases, some kids are coming for, say, summer school or a camp or VBS, but maybe not all children are going to be able to have access to those meals. And so we've learned that from families who have responded back to us, as well as just hearing anecdotally about, it's so much easier for families to come and pick up those meals and take them back home versus having them come and sit on site. Or even if you did a 1-day non-congregate where they had to come and pick up every single day, that's really challenging for families that work and for families that have transportation barriers. So thinking through, how do we do multiple days worth of meals? Of course, I want to caveat all of this with the fact that our, make sure our state agency is on board. They know your plan and they've approved of your plan before we get going. But just thinking through, how do we make sure that we're covering all meals over a 7-day period, thinking through breakfast and lunch. So if you have historically provided meals through only the month of June, thinking through what would it look like to add an additional couple of days to be able to do that. So we would really like to think through what that looks like, thinking through staffing and things of that nature. Again, if you're not able to get approval to do all 7 days at once, thinking about, how do we do 2 days of distribution? So what if we did a 3-day and a 4-day? I have several districts that I've worked with in the past and partners who will do a Tuesday and a Friday distribution. They'll do 3 days on Tuesday, 4 days on Friday, and that is a lot easier for families. Also, if they were to miss the 1 day, if you did just a 1-day distribution of however days of meals, they missed out on the whole week. But if you did a 2 and 3, then they potentially have the opportunity to come and at least get one of them if they weren't able to get both. Again, this is another one that we've seen in other locations, but thinking through and talking with your state agency about getting approval to send home weekend meals if you do have that congregate setting, whether it be Boys and Girls Clubs or VBS or camps or summer school, like what does that look like, and talking through them and seeing how that could potentially work to be able to send those meals home for the weekend. I think, looking and hearing about some of we did have a decrease in sponsors and sites in South Carolina. However, we served more meals. And I think a lot of that is in part, over this past summer, I think a lot of that is in part to utilizing these operations and flexibility with non-congregate, and recognizing that, if we have 5 sites that we have to get meals to, how do we consolidate those sites and make it a pickup opportunity, or creating a mobile route that would be closer to where families live? So if you have a low participation site, maybe thinking through, all right, well, how can we get it to a place, provide more meals so it's worth it for families to get to, but that maybe that will help with your efficiency of being able to serve those meals and make it financially stable or viable for everyone. Also thinking through that, maybe one distribution model is not always going to fit all families, and thinking through what would, your communities, your families in those areas, and thinking through a grab and go and a mobile route, or maybe you have a grab and go and a home delivery option. So, again, everything needs to be approved by your state agency, but these are some things that we have seen work well across other states, and wanting to make sure that that would be approved, but also meeting all the needs of the individual families in your communities. Some other maybe a little bit simpler things to think through is thinking about your time of pickup, and potentially extending that time. So if you've only allowed an hour for families to pick up, maybe making it 2 hours, or potentially shifting it in the afternoon or later in the evening, so that parents don't have to get away from work to come, and they could come after work to be able to pick those meals up. So really thinking about the end user first, and thinking through, like, if I were a family and I wanted to pick up meals, what is going to be most effective to meet their needs and meet them where they're at in their communities. And then adding any new sites in an area or in a county that had no rural non-congregate service last year. And, that's where we can kind of look at our map and the USDA capacity builder map from last year to look at where sites were that, or maybe they weren't, and figuring out, what's in that particular area that we could help. And are there a lot of children in there? Is there a church, or is there a library? Is there a different partner that could really help us out? One of the things that we've been doing, I know at Kid Hungry, is trying to educate and plant the seeds of like, what is summer meals to a lot of different groups. Just yesterday, we presented to the South Carolina Office of Rural Health. So health clinics across rural communities, and where can they have a place for that? Maybe it's just them advertising your sites that you have, but maybe it's them becoming a site and allowing for a distribution on a day or so if they're in a place where a lot of families have access to pick up food. We are going to be presenting next week to the South Carolina State Department of Libraries, and all the libraries and ways in which they can, either, again, advertise your sites for you and let families know, because they're a great resource in the community, but also what does it look like for them to be a site and offer. I was able to help a rural area out in Tennessee this past summer. They chose the three libraries. The three libraries were their three pickup sites throughout the summer, and it worked really well. So thinking about who those other partners were and how can we plant those seeds, and maybe nothing really happens this year, but if they're starting to learn about your program, the more they learn, the more likely they will come on board even in the future. So sometimes we plant seeds just to hope they cultivate and grow, and then we are ultimately able to feed and reach more children. So just a few ideas for you to think through as you are starting your planning right now for the summer. Next slide, please. As we mentioned earlier, we do have an upcoming webinar on expanding your reach. Our National No Kid Hungry team is putting this webinar together. So this will be an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about how you can operate non-congregate meal programs in rural communities that don't necessarily have a congregate site. So you will hear from some of our colleagues from the No Kid Hungry campaign, as well as a few school nutrition directors and community organizations who will speak to how they have expanded meal programs in their non-congregate programs. So these are free, and you can register. They will send you a recording if you aren't able to make it to those. But as you are thinking through, I think sometimes we get a little limited by our own imaginations, and hearing from others and their experience is a really great opportunity for us to try something new and reach some more families. So just mark your calendar for that. There will be, I think it's going to be every Thursday at 3 p.m. for the next several weeks. So as additional sites are put, or webinars are put on the calendar, we want to make sure we get that out to you guys. So hopefully, if you aren't receiving our newsletter every month, we would love to have you join and start receiving our newsletter for going forward. Next slide. Also, we are planning, along with the South Carolina Department of Education, a summer sponsor planning workshop. We will have a couple of sponsors specifically from South Carolina who will share on what has really come in handy for helping them service their summer programs. Justine will be sharing about her summer program and how she's been able to maneuver a lot of sites, maybe consolidating some, changing some, and being able to serve as many kids as possible. But also hearing from Akella Mitchell, who's school nutrition director out of Union County, who will be sharing about her marketing and promotion of her summer meal program. She has really tapped into the Facebook Live and really communicating with her community in that direction, because she's not shy at all. So we're excited to have those. We'll have them ready to go. So yes, and we will be able to share that information. We haven't even sent out the email, so you are getting this one hot off the press today. It will be coming out very soon. All right, next slide. And with that being said, a couple months ago, we started what is called now the South Carolina Child Nutrition Sponsor Gathering. This is an opportunity for both schools and community sponsors to come together the third Thursday of every month. The next one will be next Thursday, March the 20th. And it's an opportunity for sponsors, so both schools and community organizations, to join together. We typically have an opportunity to do introductions because, again, I think, what I've found, having done this for the last 4 years in Tennessee and just recently starting here in South Carolina, we don't know who our partners are and what they're doing and how could we potentially work together or learn from one another or support one another. And so it's just 1 hour a month You can hear an update from the state agency. You can ask questions of your colleagues, and just really good discussion and opportunity. So if you get the chance, we would love to have you join us, and we can send out that invitation as well. So just wanted to let you know about that good opportunity to connect with partners. Next slide. And I think that will do it for this morning. We knew that, there may be questions, and we can kind of look at that as well. But feel free to come off. Yes, Cheryl. Yes. So last year, I think that several of our sponsors were only able to serve 5 days of a week of meals. So I think that is something that you will continue to have those conversations with your state agency. And it sounds like things went really well last summer. So hopefully, having continued those conversations about saying, you know what, we feel like we have the capacity and the ability to serve safely 7 days worth of meals. We would really, like to move that direction. So would love to hear how that conversation continues. Does anyone else have any additional questions? I appreciate Hannah and Maisha for helping me with the webinar today. We will, like I said, this was recorded, and we will be sending out the recording as well as the slides with the links that will be embedded in that. If you are interested in moving forward with the grant and you kind of have your plans aligned with what our priorities are, then would encourage you to fill out the inquiry form and give us as much detail as you can on that. And then we will hear back from our team on next steps as far as that goes. Does anyone have any additional questions? We will stay on the line.
Marissa,
Yes.
this is Tracy Presley from CMD's Pantry.
Yes. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
I didn't see when we should start filling out for the grant. I saw that it's rolling into April 21st, but when do we start?
You can start right now. That inquiry form is live.
Okay, thank you. And you will send out the link for it.
Yep. And Maisha may have already put it in. Yep, it's already in our it's in the chat over there. You'll see where she put the inquiry form. So if everyone wants to click on that, take a look at it, mull it over, think, I know you're all thinking through your plans. It is already February, the middle of February, so time is quickly ticking on by. But I know that you all have those plans, starting to jot those down. So feel free to put that in if those are coming close to what you're interested in doing. Okay. Any other questions on the application? Again, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Can get you in touch with Hannah if you have any specific questions that she may need. But we will be working through this as quickly as we can. And that's the way to support you. Hope you will be able to find use of many of our resources that we have on our Center for Best Practices page as well. And happy to send those over. There you go. I should just pull it up for us so you can see what it looks like. All righty, everybody. Well, we appreciate your time and thank you for joining us today. And we will look forward to being in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thanks, y'all. We'll see you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.